Coming up on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, the depth chart is out. What it mean for a player? We'll talk to about that with LeShun Daniels. It's game week. Preparations ongoing for the Hawkeyes. Week 0 is in the books. We'll get LeShun's thought on Nebraska doing Nebraska things once again. And Tyler Goodson, he has been cut by the Packers. What does that mean? And we'll go back and maybe not the fondest memories for LeShun. All coming up on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast.
Are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon. He's LeShun Daniels. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen each and every day. Available wherever you can find podcasts and also available on YouTube where you can see us each and every day. Give us a follow and click that subscribe button on YouTube as we try to push to 1,000 followers before we get to the Michigan game. LeShun, I put that up there a little bit for our listeners and for our watchers out there. Need to get to 1,000 subscribers by the time we get to the Michigan game. You think that's a realistic goal?
Yeah, for sure. I don't see why not. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see why not. They love the Hawks, right? So come on, we need some more fans, people listening in, and subscribing is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. You'll get that notification each and every time we're ready to go here talking Hawkeye. So LeShun, little bit of a problem yesterday as we started the podcast. You were in the dark, more difficult on a video podcast. But secondly, your Wi-Fi was also out. So we had a little crappy connection. So we decided just to push it today. So thank you for your flexibility and a lot of things certainly to talk about. Yesterday, I went deep and talked a lot about what is happening with the depth chart. You know, what we see, what it comes out. We'll get to that with you in a moment. But before we kind of break down what you saw from the depth chart yesterday, I want to get your perspective as a player. You know, when you saw that, when it came out, is it posted in the locker room? I think of one of my favorite college football movies, The Program, First Team Defense. You know, is that what's happening here? Fill us in what the depth chart means to an actual player.
Yeah, so no, it's definitely not like that. For the most part, like it's not really, I don't think it's actually posted anywhere
Hmm.
like a complex. Or at least it wasn't when I was there. I mean, who knows? Maybe they changed it and they do post it around, but no, it wasn't usually posted. I mean, for the most part, basically everyone knew like if they were going to be like if they were the starters, right, or if they're with the second group. I mean, it's just basically how it went in practice, right? With practice reps, right? You have an idea of the guys that go out there when they say like first team's up, right, and then when the second team's up, like you like the guys, they just kind of know like who goes there. And like this is something like it's probably been determined like for a while. Like I'm sure these guys like already knew this for a while. It's just something that they put out like ahead of the game, just so the media and everyone kind of knows like what people are going to be in what places. So it's not that too big of a deal, to be honest, especially as a player. Like, and for the most part, if you are on the travel squad, meaning that for home games, like you head to the hotel or away games, right? You're on the flight and everything. Like you know that there is a possibility that you're going to be in the game on Saturday. So you still have to prepare the entire game week as if you're going to be the guy that's starting. So it really doesn't make that big of a difference to a player because I mean, you never know when you could be in.
That's good. Yeah. And it's interesting. So the depth chart, what it means probably means more to us in the media and trying to figure things out. Any takeaways from you? No changes at the quarterback spot. It was Petrus listed as a starter, Padilla as his backup, Gavin Williams, a starter at running back, LeShun behind him back there. One of my big takeaways is, of course, no Nico Reganey. We've talked about that foot injury that he's dealing with right now. And walk on Jack Johnson then jumps in to the backup spot behind Arlen Bruce. I'm still waiting, though, about Keegan Johnson and what we're going to see. We didn't see Nico Reganey listed. We know he's dealing with an injury. Keegan Johnson certainly has missed a lot of camp with his injury. I don't know. Do you anticipate if you're on that depth chart, even if you're dealing with an injury, did that say anything to you guys as a player that, hey, we think you're going to be able to give it a go on Saturday?
Yeah, I would say usually like if you're on the depth chart, like they're pretty much anticipating like yeah, like they'll probably be able to play.
Okay.
come game day. Um, Cause I don't think right. Coach Ferentz is the one to play around too much, like with the depth charts, things like that. But yeah, usually if you're on the depth chart, like usually like they're expecting like, hey, it'd be good to go, like, or at least in some way, shape, or form, even if it is limited snaps, right? They still like if you're on there, like there's a probably like a high probability that they're expecting them to be able to be ready to go for game day.
Good stuff there. So it is game week, and we've talked about the evolution throughout camp. We talked about what it's like when you're sitting there in the hotel for the 2 weeks of camp. Then you guys get ready. You get to finally leave that hotel. You go out. You get back to your dorm, or your apartment, or your house, whatever it is, and you go through that. So now we're finally at game week. What is this like for a player? Game week, you're going to be able to finally hit somebody in a different color jersey and a different helmet. You're finally going to be able to do those things. You're sick of seeing each other in practice every single time. And now you're also implementing what the game plan is like. So that week one, game one, you guys took on some pretty good FCS opponents. I remember during your tenure also with the Hawkeyes. So what the buildup is and getting ready finally to play that first game.
Yeah, so for starters, the first game is always like really, really exciting, right? No matter who the opponent is, right? Just because, as you mentioned, right, you finally get to hit someone else, right? You actually get to show off what you've been working on for this entire off season, right, over the past 9 months. So to be at this point in time, right, and you're getting prepared for Saturday, like everyone's excited, and for the most part, I'm pretty sure like everyone's gonna be like locked in um for game preparation just because hey, it's the first game, right? You want to make a good first impression for the 2022 football team, and going out there and coming out with the victory on Saturday is a great way to do it. So yeah, usually everyone's pretty excited about getting out there and playing the game. And obviously preparation is a little bit different, right, for the first week because you don't have like up-to-date tape and all these different things. So like if teams get new coaches, right, you're trying to study, you're obviously still studying the team from last year, but you're also like if they were a coordinator elsewhere, you're watching tape from where they were a coordinator at, and all these different things that kind of play into it until you actually get some on field tape for the current year. So it's very exciting as a player. But I feel like the first week is definitely a little bit more difficult to game plan for, just because again, you have an idea of what they're going to do, but you don't know exactly what's going to happen and what they're actually going to show come Saturday. So usually there's going to be a lot of adjustments that get made during the game and during halftime, really over the next couple of weeks.
When we're talking about this team and the offense, we expect to see some wrinkles, some changes, some evolution out of Brian and the rest of the offensive staff and trying to move things forward. As we go through this and we look at what they're dealing with right now at the wide receiver position, Deontay Vines finally looked like it was clicking for him. He breaks his wrist. He's going to be out until October. We talked about Nico Reganey dealing with that foot injury. Keegan Johnson has not practiced a whole lot, if at all, here during August camp. And we're going through all these different things. How impactful is this at the wide receiver position? I mean, we talk about offensive line and the run game and how important it is to get that continuity with the zone blocking scheme. What about the wide receiver group when you're dealing with so many injuries? How impactful is that to try to kind of implement everything you want to do offensively?
Yeah, it definitely makes it tougher, right? Obviously, especially in the pass game, right? It does have an effect on the run game a little bit, just because Iowa, they do expect the receivers to be able to go out there and block and make smart decisions in the run game. But I really feel like it's going to have a little bit of an effect on the passing game, especially for the things that Coach Brian wants to do. So yeah, it's not gonna be easy task for the Iowa offense on Saturday and in general, right? Just kind of preparing for this upcoming week, right? Because you're gonna have a lot of young guys that are in there. Granted, right? Besides Nico, I don't know if any of the guys are really guys that were seniors, right? So you're really trying to keep it as simple as possible for the young guys right now, so that they can go out there and they can play fast on Saturday, right? Because we've talked about it before, right? Iowa's not the most is not the easiest offense to learn, and especially in an offense where it calls on a number of different players to be able to read a lot of different things that are happening during the play and make good decisions, their mind's gonna be moving at a million miles per hour. So to make it as simple as possible for those guys is what's gonna help them play fast, so that they can go out there and play their best on Saturday. And then it's also gonna be an issue kind of with the quarterbacks as well, because now you don't know what receivers are gonna be in there. Like you
Mhm.
don't know like their speed, like how they run their routes and things like that. Obviously, like you want everyone to have similar route running between all the different receivers, so like the timing in there stays relatively consistent. But the fact of the matter is, if you have new guys in there, right, it's just going to be different, right? Especially with guys that don't have as much experience. So the passing game could possibly not be as sharp as obviously we would like it to. But that said, right, we still have the running backs and we still have the tight ends that play a big part into Iowa's offense in the passing game, where um, Coach Brian will have to be a little bit creative in getting those guys a little bit more involved come Saturday.
Well, with that, LeShun, we're going to continue here our conversation. Going to give you a chance to look back at your career a little bit. Tyler Goodson, a surprise to a lot of people as he was cut today by the Green Bay Packers, what he's going through. You'll explain a little bit of that process. Also, there is a point spread that is out for the South Dakota State Iowa game. We'll talk about that as we continue. You're listening to the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your sports betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. College football is here. They got you covered with MLB, NFL, NBA, and NHL right around the corner. The top online resource for all wagering information is BetOnline. Live in-game betting, scores, podcasts, they have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening. BetOnline, where the game starts. LeShun, with that, we look at the betting line. Now, this is often far off places currently right now, not available at many of the U.S. shops, but there is a point spread that came out. It is 5 dimes. It's a longtime operator offshore. They have been somebody that is certainly been at the forefront of sports wagering in a place where I know a lot of pros have gone in the past because he can get some big money down on that. I don't bet big money. I keep it simple. I keep my small bets. We're going to be having fun with Bet Online and some bets here on our Friday programs together each and every week. LeShun, 15.5 is the number. Iowa favored by 15.5. I have my own system that I use. It's a number of different power systems along with a couple of people that I respect. I come out with the number. My number was 19.5 going into when I was coming up with my number. So a little bit surprised. And be with that, if I play by my numbers, that means I'd be laying the 15.5 with Iowa coming up on Saturday. But certainly an interesting number there. Hawkeyes just over a 2-touchdown favorite against a pretty good South Dakota State team.
Yeah, obviously it's always good to be favored in any football game, right? It tells you that, hey, we're doing a bunch of things right. That said, right, I know that in the building, right, they're kind of treating everything as if, right, they're the underdogs, right? As if
Mhm.
um, that they have something to prove, right? Because see, going back to last year, right, they didn't finish the season as strongly as they would have liked. And South Dakota State was a really, really good football team in the FCS last year, right? And obviously, there's been times where we've had struggles with FCS football teams. I mean, FBS teams all around the country have troubles with FCS teams, right? It's because first off, it's hard to win college football games no matter who you go against. So there's no taking anything lightly whatsoever come game time. But I would say that being a 2 touchdown favorite is probably pretty accurate. I feel like the Iowa offense is going to have a bunch of improvements, especially on the offensive line, and that's not going to be understated, right? I feel like that's going to have a much bigger impact than what I feel like is talked about.
Mhm.
I feel like that's something that hasn't been as talked about as much, and obviously we know the defense is going to be stout. So, yeah, I would say that 2.5, that 2 touchdown favorite is probably a pretty good assessment this upcoming
The
Saturday.
2015 season, you guys opened up the year against Illinois State. They were coming off a FCS championship game appearance. They lost to North Dakota State that year. They were preseason number 2. I mean, there was a lot of buzz about that team. They certainly had your guys' attention, I'm gonna assume. You've said this before, LeShun. Kirk's not gonna let you guys overlook anybody, and certainly first game of the year against a team like that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, we prepared as if we were the underdogs right that week.
Mhm.
And obviously coming from that 2014 season where that was not good football by us by any means. So yeah, we definitely had something to prove, and we felt like we had a chip on our shoulder. We had, this hot and upcoming team, right, coming in to Kinnick, right, and obviously coming in to try to pull off an upset. And those were things that, Coach Ferentz just kind of mentioned throughout the week, and we prepared, as if we were the underdogs and we had something to prove. And then when we went out there on that Saturday, right, we played flawless on all three phases of the football game. So I'm sure that they're probably saying a lot of the same things throughout the building right now, so that they can go and put on a good showing, right, for obviously the fans, but also start the year on the right foot.
Well, that'll be South Dakota State, 11 o'clock kickoff against the Jackrabbits. We'll a little bit later in the week do a deep dive into South Dakota State. And LeShun, you mentioned maybe a chance for this offense to go forward. I do remember one number off the top of my head. They were in the 70th percentile at the FCS level in pass defense a year ago. So maybe a little bit of hope there. We can see that passing game get off to a good start. LeShun, I wanted to jump over to the news from earlier this morning, and that is Tyler Goodson being cut by the Green Bay Packers. He was outstanding at times during preseason. We know they got Aaron Jones, they got AJ Dillon, and when he initially signed with them, it looked like it was going to be pretty difficult. But I know they had a young guy that was working his way off of injury, and coupled with the play that we saw from Tyler Goodson, boy, it felt like, at least from this outsider perspective, that he had a really good chance to make the team. First of all, have you had a chance to talk to Tyler, text with him at all? And I know it came as a surprise to me. How about you? Were you surprised he got cut down today by the Packers?
So I haven't talked to him. Um, Obviously, I'm sure he's probably not in the best
Yeah.
mood. Because obviously I've been there. I've been there multiple
Mhm.
times, right? It's not a good feeling. Um, and the second part of your question, I would say, yeah, I was a little shocked. That they did waive him. Granted, right, he did come into a pretty tough running back room, right? It's obviously like you obviously like at that point, especially with the two top backs that they have there, right? You're basically trying to fight for one spot, right? And then possibly another spot in the practice squad, which is still an option, right? I'm sure if he does clear waivers, right, they would probably be trying to get him on the practice squad. Um, but yeah, I mean, he did a bunch of good things from when I watched him right during the preseason games. Obviously, those are just really three practices in addition to over really a month and some change of work, right? So who knows what happened throughout the other practices and things like that. But from reports that I heard, obviously he was having a pretty good preseason camp. So yeah, I was definitely a little bit surprised. That said, obviously, I don't think this is definitely not going to be the end of his NFL road whatsoever, right? I mean, there's a
Mhm.
pretty high probability that he could get claimed on waivers, which is for people that don't know, is right. It's when you get released, when you get waived, and then like all the other 31 teams have an opportunity to claim you, right? So you don't essentially become a free agent, right? So um, when you get claimed, right, you automatically get put on the active roster, and then that team has to obviously they have to cut someone else to open up that spot. So I feel like there's a very good possibility that that does happen for him because I mean he did a bunch of good things, right? Ran the ball really well, caught the football well, and then showed great moves in the open field, which are all things that he did during his Iowa football career. So I am excited to see kind of what happens next for him, but yeah, it's definitely not the easiest time as a player, all right? Because like on cut down day, like you're so nervous and you're just like you're literally just sitting there like staring at your phone like for the entire day, like is anyone gonna call me? Like is any like am I gonna make it? And all this stuff, especially when you're an undrafted guy like us, right? It's a different situation to be in versus when you're uh you know top 3 round draft pick, right? You're not really too worried on cut down day. So um, yeah.
Well, unless you're Kellen Mond, the quarterback in
Yes,
his second year with the
that's
Vikings,
true.
and
That's also
he's gonna be
true.
good. I mean, that's crazy too. Those stories, yeah, it's one thing for a Tyler Goodson. It sucks for him and everything, but
Mhm.
you know what an uphill climb it's gonna be as an undrafted guy. You're a second round
Yeah.
quarterback pick, and you're cutting your second year. Whew, that cannot be a fun spot. So,
No.
LeShun, you get that call. It sucks. You got to
Mhm.
bring your playbook. We saw it on Hard Knocks. We've seen that before. And
Yeah.
then you're working behind the scenes. So what you're talking to your agent, you're kind of figuring out, all right, is somebody else going to pick you up? That's
Mhm.
probably the best spot, right? Because you know you're automatically going to have a spot on a roster if somebody
Yes.
claims you off of waivers. But after that process, then is it workouts? Is it sending tape around? I mean, what is your agent doing and what is your conversation as the player with them?
Yeah. So, um, basically, my conversation with my agent when I got released, basically, it was just like, you focus on working out and staying in top shape, right? And then they'll handle the rest, right? So if you get released, right, no one claims you, and then you don't sign on the practice squad, right? That's the toughest part, right? That's where, like, honestly, like a lot of people probably start falling off after that point, just because now, now this is the first time in a very, very long time where you're not on the team, right? And now you're doing workouts and different things. You're still trying to train yourself, and you're doing this stuff on your own, right? So sometimes agents will like help you out with finding like a place to go train at and things like that. But uh, a lot of times you are training on your own, right? You're going to a field, right? You're going to a weight room, right? Whether you're working out at, call it like a, a true training gym, or you're going to LA Fitness, right? You have to do whatever you can, right? To make sure that not only obviously you're keeping your strength, but you're keeping your speed and your conditioning, right? Because then after that, right now it becomes obviously a free for all, right? The agents are trying to work, they're trying to get you to either just get signed to a practice squad or a active roster, which would be ideal. Or a lot of times, the team will bring you in and a few other guys in, for a workout, right? Whether you have to fly across country, right, or it's local or whatever, but you have to go in and do these workouts, and they want to see, like a 40 usually, right? Obviously, they do some medical stuff, and then they see some on-field drills, right? How you work, how you move, and all those different things. And that's the process, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world, right? Because obviously right now you're not even making money. So you're trying to do whatever you can to get back on that roster so you can obviously put food on the table, pay your rent, do all those different things. So it's definitely a grind, right? So this is the point in time where a lot of players do kind of fall off, where they just go like, "Hey, like this is gonna be the end of the road for me," or they don't keep up on that stuff, and then when they get brought in for a workout, then they don't go and they don't perform at the way that they performed, like, maybe they would have during the preseason, or how they performed during the combine, those different things. And then scouts and the GM, they kind of just look at it like, okay, like we're just going to cross this guy off our list and we're going to move on to the next guy. So yeah, that's kind of the process, from this point on. And obviously now, like with the USFL and XFL starting back up this upcoming year, uh, those players now have a few more opportunities to keep playing football. Because like before, like it was really just the CFL or
Mhm.
like indoor football, which is a lot different than obviously playing in the states and being in the USFL or XFL. So
Well, that is a look at what is going on right now for all these guys across NFL camps, and trying to figure out what's next. It's definitely got to be a very, very scary time, I'm sure, for a lot of these guys. LeShun, we wrap things up, and I gave some thoughts yesterday on Nebraska as they fall once again to Northwestern. The onside kick that'll probably go down in infamy in the Scott Frost tenure, up 11. Onside kick. Northwestern gets it, marches right down the field, and it was a ball game from there. Illinois, they picked up a nice win against Wyoming over the weekend, a few other week zero games. But let's start right there, LeShun. That you mentioned earlier, the 2014 year, the last time the Hawkeyes lost in Nebraska. Boy, you just look at this program, and it is one thing after another. Anything they can do to screw up a game, they do it.
yeah, I'm still just mind blown on that decision to kick the onside kick. I get
Mhm.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, wow, you got these guys against along the ropes, right? You have the opportunity, right, to obviously get another stop on defense, right, and then go down and score another touchdown. And then Scott Frost decides, you know what? This is a great time to kick an onside kick, right? While we're up 11 points. And obviously they don't get it, right? Then Northwestern goes on like, they score like within the next like 4 or 5 plays.
Mhm.
And now you're back in a ball game, right? Now instead of, possibly getting a stop and then getting a 2-score lead. Right now, it becomes a 1-score ball game. Um, Now it becomes a 1-score ball game, and now you're stuck in a situation like, oh crap, like here we go again, right? And then lo and behold, Nebraska, they couldn't get a stop on defense, right? Their run defense was very, very poor. And then when the going got tough and they needed to make a play, right, they weren't able to do that. So it really just looked like the same old Nebraska, right? Even though that they had, uh, some abilities that their quarterback was able to show off, and he did some good things. But when it came down at the end of the game, and it was the gotta have it situations, right? Nebraska wasn't able to come through, and then obviously we saw the post game interviews, and Scott Frost is talking about how the offense needs to be more creative, and blah 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 blah, which frankly, I just don't think it's true.
No.
At least not in the Big Ten West, right? When you look at these teams that compete every single year in the Big Ten West, right? You look at Wisconsin, you look at Iowa, you look at Minnesota, you look at Northwestern, even Northwestern, right? These guys, like these teams, right? A lot of the time they're able to control the trenches, right? And they have their identity and they stick to it, right? None of those teams are doing anything offensively that makes you sit there and go like, wow, like that's some really creative offensive football play calling. It's just not there, right? Those teams, they all have an identity and they make sure that they show off that identity on Saturdays. And Nebraska, again, it's week after week and year after year at this point that it's always some excuses or something that that's not Scott Frost's fault, and that's really honestly at this point it's been their downfall. So that's really all I've got to say about that game. And then obviously credit to Northwestern, right?
Yeah.
Bunch of credit to them, their culture and their coaching staff. Obviously, they're rock solid, right? Every single year, every other year, it seems like you're going to get a solid Northwestern team, and looks like they have some potential this year. Granted, they did just play Nebraska, right? And Nebraska hasn't been that great, but who knows, right? They could end up being a really good football team this year.
Well, it's great having football back. Great having you back as well, LeShun. Thanks for joining me here today. We'll do it Friday. We're going to make some picks on Friday, and we will get ready. We'll be a day away from Iowa football back for 2022. Thanks as always for your time, LeShun.
Yeah, yep, appreciate it.
Back with you tomorrow with more Locked On Hawkeyes. JC's going to join me on Thursday. LeShun back on Friday. Plenty of sports betting and a look towards South Dakota State. We'll get ready for the Jackrabbits. All coming up on your next edition of the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Go Hawks.